Welcome to this explainer. Look, today we're diving deep into the incredible story of a revolutionary invention that totally transformed human civilization forever. But to really wrap our heads around it, I need you to just strip away all your modern financial comforts for a second. Seriously, forget your digital banking apps, forget the paper bills in your wallet, and even the heavy metal coins clinking around in your pocket. Honestly, erase the whole concept of a salary from your mind. We're going to take a thousands of years long chronological journey to discover how humanity created the universal language of value. Picture this. You wake up in a world where money simply doesn't exist. Nothing. Zip. If you want food, you've got to trade something for it. If you need clothes, tools, shelter, you literally have to convince someone else to exchange their goods with you. Which brings us to a very real, incredibly practical nightmare. How do you actually buy milk with a chicken? Or what if you need to trade 10 fish for a pair of shoes? Paying a debt with sacks of wheat? This was the reality of the barter system. And for thousands of years, this was exactly how humans survived. All right, so here's our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. The flaws of barter. 2. First forms and coins. 3. Paper money and banks. 4. The digital money revolution. And 5. Why money has value. Let's get right into it. Now, the history of money is fundamentally a chronological journey of problem solving. Every single era we're going to look at, from prehistoric barter to ancient commodities, the Lydian coins of 600 BCE, Chinese paper money, all the way up to 24th century digital currencies, was a massive technological leap. And each new step was invented for one reason: to solve the specific crippling flaws of the system that came right before it. Starting with number 1, the flaws of barter. A world without money? So long before cities even existed, early tribes pretty much produced things for themselves, but as societies grew, specialization started to kick in. Suddenly, you had dedicated hunters, farmers, potters, toolmakers, and this created the absolute biggest roadblock in economic history. We call it the double coincidence of wants. Basically, if our farmer has wheat but wants meat, and the shoemaker has shoes but wants rice, trade is just entirely blocked. The shoemaker doesn't want your wheat. You have to somehow go find a third person who wants wheat and has rice, trade with them, and then finally go back to the shoemaker. It was slow, it was confusing, and honestly just incredibly inefficient. And the friction points didn't stop there. I mean, think about these questions for a second. How many apples actually equal one chicken? How many chickens equal a cow? Barter totally lacked a universal exchange rate. And worse, what if you only wanted a small basket of apples, but all you had to trade was a live cow? You can't exactly divide a living cow into smaller payments without, well, completely ruining the asset. Plus, carrying grain or livestock across mountains for long-distance trade, physically agonizing. Civilization had basically hit a ceiling. Which brings us to Section 2, First Forms and Coins, solving the barter problem. To break this economic gridlock, civilizations began experimenting with commodity money. These were objects that had value simply because people collectively trusted and desired them. And across the globe, early money took a wildly fascinating variety of forms. Over in Africa, they used salt. In parts of Asia, cowrie shells. Native American tribes used wampum beads. And on some Pacific islands, they literally used giant stones. No joke. These items worked perfectly in their specific regions because they were universally desired. You didn't need to hunt down someone who specifically wanted your wheat anymore. You just traded your wheat for cowrie shells because you knew everyone accepted cowrie shells. Now get this. Salt was incredibly important in the ancient world because, well, before refrigerators, it was literally the only way to preserve meat so it wouldn't rot. It was so highly valued that Roman soldiers were sometimes paid directly with it. In fact, that exact practice is where our modern word salary comes from. It's derived straight from the Latin word related to salt. Pretty cool, right? But, as you can imagine, shells can break, and salt is hard to measure perfectly. The real turning point happened right around the year 600 BCE. Over in the ancient kingdom of Lydia, which is in modern-day Turkey, something extraordinary happened. The world's first official coins were created from electrum, which is a natural mixture of gold and silver. These coins were an absolute game changer. Why? Well, they wouldn't rot for starters, they were incredibly easy to carry, and they offered standard division. The Lydians actually stamped symbols onto them to guarantee their value, backed by the authority of the state. Because gold and silver are rare, beautiful, and super hard to counterfeit, they possessed true intrinsic value. Thanks to this one invention, global trade just exploded across the Greek, Persian, and Roman empires. Armies could easily be paid, taxes collected, and massive economies organized. Section 3. Paper money and banks. Lighter loads and lending. Okay, gold is fantastic, sure, but carrying hundreds of heavy coins across continents? Super dangerous and exhausting. Humanity desperately needed a lighter solution. Now, most people just assume paper money started in Europe, but actually, during the Tang and Song dynasties in China, merchants solved the heavy coin problem by leaving their metal with trusted traders and just carrying lightweight paper receipts instead. Eventually, the Chinese government stepped in and created officially state-backed paper currency. When Marco Polo saw this in the 13th century, Europeans literally couldn't believe it. I mean, how could a simple piece of paper have any real value? The answer, which as we'll see is a recurring theme, was trust. But here's the catch. While paper money made global trade incredibly fast and light, it introduced a very dangerous new economic phenomenon: inflation. Because the currency was just paper, if a government printed too much of it, it rapidly lost its value. History is packed with examples where prices rose so insanely fast that citizens literally needed wheelbarrows full of cash just to go buy a single loaf of bread. Paper money was incredibly powerful, but potentially very unstable. Let's walk through these steps to see how paper money birthed modern banking. Step 1. People stored their gold in secure vaults with goldsmiths. Step 2. They received a paper receipt. Step 3. Instead of withdrawing the gold every time, they just traded the receipts in the market. But step 4. This is the genius part. Bankers realized that everyone rarely withdrew all their gold at exactly the same time. So banks began lending out some of that stored gold to others while keeping just enough in reserve. Boom. Money stopped being just a physical object. It became this complex system of promises, records, and credit that eventually fueled the entire Industrial Revolution. Moving right along to Section 4, the digital money revolution, invisible numbers. Think about this for a second. When was the last time you actually touched most of your money? The physical cash that totally revolutionized the ancient world is now barely needed at all. Today, your salary is deposited digitally, you buy your groceries with a quick tap of your card or an instant phone payment. Someone in India can buy a product from America in literally seconds. Modern banks don't move bags of gold around anymore. They just move digital information at the speed of the internet. But digital centralized banking brought its own modern issues, right? Cybercrime, surveillance, and just absolute dependence on traditional banking institutions. Then, in the pivotal year of 2009, a mysterious figure named Satoshi Nakamoto introduced Bitcoin. This kicked off the entire cryptocurrency revolution, creating a brand new way for people to exchange digital money entirely without relying on governments or traditional banks. The shift we've experienced has been absolute. Like the quote says, modern money is mostly just numbers stored inside computers. From heavy giant stones and cowrie shells to stamped gold coins, then paper receipts, and now, invisible pixels. It just proves that the technology of money is constantly evolving, always trying to become faster and more frictionless. Which brings us to our final section, number 5. Why money has value. The invisible thread. So, if a coin is just a piece of metal, and a digital bank balance is literally just pixels on your screen, why do we spend our lives chasing it? To understand this, we've got to look at 3 major economic functions. First, money is a medium of exchange, letting us easily trade without going back to barter. Second, it's a store of value, allowing us to save today's hard labor for tomorrow. And third, it's a unit of account, giving us a common measuring stick to value an apple, a chicken, or a sports car. Without these 3 functions, our globally connected civilization of strangers would just instantly collapse backward into the absolute chaos of the barter system. But the real engine making those 3 functions work, it's one word: trust. Money is not gold. It is not paper. It's definitely not code. Money is simply a shared, collective belief between billions of people that something has value. When you accept money for your hard work, you simply trust that the grocery store will accept it from you tomorrow. This shared human agreement makes money our greatest invention for sure, but also our most dangerous driver of power, greed, and inequality. So where does this wild chronological journey go next? Well, the future is already rapidly arriving. Governments all over are actively testing central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. We're looking at a new frontier of AI banking, paying simply with a biometric fingerprint, and automated blockchain contracts. Honestly, the next generation might look at our current paper wallets exactly the same way we look at those ancient cowrie shells, just completely outdated relics. Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought to consider today. Will physical cash disappear forever? The next time you swipe a card, hold a coin, or check a digital bank balance, remember that you are actively participating in a system of trust that is literally thousands of years old. A system that completely transformed human civilization, and one whose story is definitely still being written. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep questioning the history behind the everyday things we just take for granted.